Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Speak Now. It's your host JWolf. We are so excited to get into our week two recap. Week three look ahead, man. We are so excited that football's back. I got Steve joining me in just a second, but first, make sure you like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. It's time to speak now. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Speak Now. It is JWolf here. I am joined by the great Steve Malone, the king of picks. Even though this year we're struggling a little bit there, Steve, with our pick'em group with Eli and Hayden. How are you feeling about this year so far?
Yeah, I mean it's with the first 2 weeks, you never know kind of how things are going to go. So making picks and trying to follow spreads and things like that when you pick all the games that can go sideways pretty quickly. I mean there was several games last week that kind of got covered or not covered at the end, depending on who you were going for. I think like the Saints game, there was the Panthers game, there was several that kind of got weird at the end kind of thing. So yeah. As long as you're consistent and just have that one bad week, then I don't being 3 games back isn't too bad. So as long as I don't do that again.
Yeah, it's definitely a long season. There's been some surprise through the first 2 weeks. I think arguably the biggest surprise, and we'll talk about resurging quarterbacks in a little bit later. But the Colts, they win again, and this one's a lot more impressive than Miami. Miami looks like they might be in contention for the number one pick, in all honesty. But going against Denver, like Denver's defense is no joke. Denver's offense picked it up a notch in this game, and Danny Dimes, man, has just played out of his mind. I've been really impressed with what I've seen from the Colts. Obviously, watched the Steelers game on Sunday. That was really frustrating, man. We cannot stop the run to save our lives. Glad that we have Aaron. Aaron looks great still. Like I know he had the 2 picks, but one was kind of in garbage time. The other one was back of the end zone. That was Calvin probably shouldn't have been there. But yeah, so I'm not feeling great about the Steelers right now. I'm definitely eager for Sunday and hoping to see some improvements. But yeah, Steve, you were at the Lions game, man. How was it to kick Ben Johnson's butt?
Yeah, I don't think there was going to be any other result than what happened, to be perfectly honest. Not to say I wasn't nervous going into the game, but I mean, you could tell the Lions were ready to go. You had the same thing that the Vikings went against, kind of the scripted first drive, and the Bears are able to go down, and the more and more the game goes, Caleb goes away from what Ben wants to do, holds on to the ball too long, those kind of things. And the Lions have actually done a lot better job of kind of containing and not letting those quarterbacks that can run get outside the pocket and really make yards with their legs. And it really causes some unforced errors, especially with Caleb. So it happened to the Vikes. And Lions, same thing, but our offense was able to capitalize obviously a lot more than the Vikings did the first week. They had to come in kind of at the end. So yeah, the atmosphere was really good, especially for a 1 o'clock game. I mean, it's going to tend to be not quite as loud as a primetime game, but people are definitely really fired up being the home opener and putting up over 50. I think quieted a lot of people about the offensive play calling and that sort of thing. I know there's people talking about how vanilla the Lions were the first week, and which they were, but a lot of that was, you got to give credit to the Packers. There's the first game of the regular season is almost a preseason game for some teams, unfortunately. But the lights are on and you got to be ready week 1. So And defense, same thing. I think the defense got better as the game went on. I do have some concerns. Terrion Arnold is having some trouble in coverage. I think he's one of the worst as far as coverage and giving up big plays. But I do know the Lions like to run a lot of man to man, and that can expose. If you're not up to snuff. I mean, I know there was. You mentioned the Steelers game. I know they got kind of crossed up on the one touchdown, and then, but like you said, I think with the Steelers there was just some unfortunate events that happened in that game. That game was honestly really close. You had the kickoff and a couple miscommunications and things like that, and those things can make the result. Another game I noted was the Tampa Bay game. I thought that was a really good game this week, and I don't know what your opinion is, but I feel like the Bucks almost let Chubb score there at the end of the game just because they knew if they didn't do that, the Houston was going to end the game on a field goal. So at that point, with them getting close down into the red zone, it was pretty much going to be a chip shot with not a lot of time left or no time left. And they had a lot of confidence in Baker to close that game out, which he did. Baker's been absolutely phenomenal. So on top of that Colts ending, which was crazy with the penalty and the extra field goal, and again, give the Colts credit. The Broncos are a really good team, and with Tyler Warren and Daniel Jones and some of the additions, and the defense is actually really good too, to be honest. Those were, that Bucks game was another takeaway that I had.
Yeah, definitely. And like Baker, like all kudos to Baker, man, and the Bucks organization just sticking behind him, being like, "This is our franchise guy," because you don't see that with a lot of these guys that started off as like a high pick for one team and they go over like Sam Darnold hasn't been like named the franchise guy in Seattle, which 2 games in, there's no reason he should, but the Bucks have been really behind Baker and surrounding him with weapons, and that's a team that I think is only going to get scarier as the season goes on, as Emeka Ibuka continues to progress, because he's looked really good so far, but it's still only 2 games into his rookie season. I can imagine by week 14, week 15, he's going to look even more like a stud. You start getting Chris Godwin back into the fold and healthy, and I know Mike Evans is getting older, but you get these other guys to kind of work in there. They are a team that I think is poised to make a good playoff run in the NFC. Yeah, I mean, I said after week 1, I've said it leading up in the preseason. Like I saw the script for the NFL season, and the storybook NFL season, man, is the Packers going to the Super Bowl to face Aaron Rodgers and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Aaron going against his old team in San Francisco, his hometown, like growing up rooting for the Niners. Like that's how it's all going to go out. He's going to win the chip, but that's one that I still am trying to believe. One take I had after week 1 that I no longer believe is that the Lions are going to miss the playoffs. I was dead wrong. But that's what week 1 is, man. It's overreactions for sure. And yeah, I think the Packers are a legit contender, which is kind of scary because watching them, and another thing that we're going to be talking about is underperforming rookies. And Matthew Golden, man, their first round wide receiver has done like nothing. As someone that has him in fantasy, man, that's concerning. Like I'm frustrated. And then I didn't think Tyler Warren was going to do anything, and then Tyler Warren comes in and you're 2 years in a row, Steve. You got the rookie tight end just balling out, dude. What gives?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I saw a lot of Brock Bowers and Tyler Warren, and comes from a traditional, Big Ten tight end kind of school. So I guess that was kind of the thought there. And I know in one league I've got Kittle with Warren, so I'm kind of really glad that I did that. And then even Bowers with clueless Geno Smith, I'm not as excited about as I was 2 weeks ago, kind of thing. And he'll be fine. Don't get me wrong, but the Raiders look like a little bit of a mess. So yeah, that's very fortunate. But then I know there's some receivers and I think other rookies, kind of like you mentioned, that we'll talk about. I'd have a lot of stock in some of those really high running backs, but even Jahmyr Gibbs, when he came in, he wasn't quite playing to the speed of the game the first half of his first season. So, seeing Genty run into blockers and Henderson get holding penalties and RJ Harvey not getting very many snaps and Omari and Hampton looking a little slow, to be honest. The Chargers have had to pass constantly, and they've somewhat also, between relying on their trio of receivers, they've also relied on their defense. Their running game has actually been really poor. So yeah, definitely the rookies have really, other than Ibuka, and I think there's a couple other guys, Tyler Warren, like you mentioned. There's some guys on the defensive side of the ball that have played well, but not the hype and the fantasy projections of first round Genty, second or third round, Hampton, and then Henderson third round. That just hasn't really panned out so far. But again, it's only 2 weeks.
Yeah. So talk about Tyler Warren. Let's talk about his quarterback, because let's talk about resurgent quarterbacks in the league. We've seen this now become a trend where it's almost like every year we're looking at that high draft pick quarterback that didn't pan out with their first team. They go somewhere, they're a backup for a little bit, and then they get a chance to start with another team. We saw it with Baker, right? Baker gets let go from the Browns, bounces to Carolina, ends up with Sean McVay in Los Angeles for a little bit, and then becomes the franchise quarterback for the Buccaneers. We saw Geno Smith go from the Jets and the Giants to having a solid few-year stint there in Seattle. Sam Darnold last year, again, goes from the Jets, goes to the Niners under the Shanahan system and learns from that, then gets to play under Kevin O'Connell, has a great season for the Vikings last year. Now he's the starter in Seattle. And then guy that was his backup last year, Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones doesn't make it in New York, sits under Kevin O'Connell as the backup after getting let go in that last season. He is now the starter in Indianapolis. 2 games, it's only 2 games, but he's looked really good, and that team has looked really good. Steve, what else have you noticed from him and just from other quarterbacks that have resurged here in the last couple of years and even this year?
Yeah, I think Daniel Jones is again in a perfect situation. You got a back like Jonathan Taylor. He's making Jonathan Taylor even better because of his legs and his ability. I think Daniel Jones has like 3 rushing touchdowns already. And then you have some really good possession receivers and Josh Downs, of course, Tyler Warren and Michael Pittman. And then, Steichen's a good mind on offense. I mean, look at the Eagles, before they let their coordinators go. Of course, they got it all back together after that last year, right? So, so far it's a great situation, and obviously the time with Kevin O'Connell didn't hurt either. And Vikings might be regretting not holding on to Daniel Jones, obviously. So, but that might have been a salary thing at the time as well. So, another guy that I feel like is a little bit resurgent. I know people still have rated him high, but I feel like Justin Herbert's another guy that's been, obviously with Jim Harbaugh is in the second year, and having them really rely more on the passing game, getting his safety blanket, Keenan Allen, back has been huge for them. Obviously, Ladd McConkey is phenomenal, but he's a little bit undersized and doesn't always get those big catches. Down in the red zone and that type of thing. I know he finished the year in a flurry last year, but I think his stock was way too high in fantasy. It's kind of one of the reasons I kept Williams over him in our fantasy league. Is that just something didn't sit right, and then the Keenan Allen signing, and just decided that there was too much going on there with Quentin Johnston still there, and Khalil Mack's going to hurt honestly with them being out for a few weeks, but they have a really solid thing going there with Jesse Minter running the defense, and obviously Harbaugh pulling the strings with Justin Herbert. Another guy that's kind of started the year. I had one more guy that kind of mentioned. I feel like Dak Prescott started the year really well. Um, and I think Javonte Williams was a really underrated signing at running back. I mean, 2 years ago, before he kind of was injured the previous year and didn't do as well last year, but before that, he was very solid with the Broncos. And then obviously bringing in George Pickens as the number two there, um, is obviously a good thing for their offense. But Dak looks pretty good. I mean, he looks like Dak, to be honest. I mean, he always puts up solid numbers. I know there's a lot of knocks on the Cowboys and that sort of thing, but I feel like there's a little bit of a resurgence there. I know that obviously Micah Parsons is going to hurt them. So I don't know if you had any other quarterbacks that you feel are kind of resurgent so far this year.
Yeah, yeah. Not really outside of the ones you listed. I think outside of Daniel Jones, I've been listening to the McAfee show, Pat McAfee show daily, and they're just like, dude, Danny Dimes all the way. Like he's gonna be the starter for 10 years, and I hope he is, man. I think it's good for the league, man. Good for these young guys. Justin Herbert is the one that you mentioned because he's a guy that has had a high pedigree, has had success in the league. Like he wasn't a bust by any means. Like definitely a franchise guy, but he's a guy that's just hasn't quite put it all together. And I just think back to the quote. I think it's Jim Harbaugh and Rich Eisen saying that he just goes to bed at night, like every night, thinking about how he can get Justin Herbert to the Hall of Fame. And we're seeing the fruits of that right now. I kind of just laughed it off after last year because I didn't think you saw much of a difference from Herbert. And I was super high on McConkey coming into our fantasy draft because I thought this is a guy that could be like 120 reception guy. Because I'm like, who else are they going to feed in that offense? I didn't think Quentin Johnston was going to do much, or I didn't think Keenan Allen was that big of a signing. And I've been proven wrong at least through 2 weeks, as all three of those guys have been fantasy relevant to start the year. But yeah, I know Marion Hampton hasn't started the year as you would like, but I feel like he's only going to get better. That's a team that could very well win this division, and you could very well be looking at the Kansas City Chiefs finishing third in that division just because of Denver and because of the Chargers and how ascending they both are. I think not quite into the resurgent level there, but definitely a person that I'm going to be watching more as the season goes on is Trevor Lawrence. I just think that team's played better so far this year. Not outstanding by any means, but they are definitely a team that I think could be on the up and up as the season progresses. Obviously, he's got to get more on the same page with Brian Thomas Jr. I know that they've been kind of out of sync, but that's I'm not quite ready to put him there, but I think he's a guy that in a couple weeks we could be talking about. Oh, Trevor Lawrence is starting to show what we all thought he could be. But on the flip side of that, Steve, what are some quarterbacks that you've been watching that have not been impressive to you so far through the first 2 weeks of the season?
Certainly a couple of the second and third year guys come to mind. CJ Stroud would be one of those. I know you could say, the blocking's not good and those types of things, but just haven't seen that progression from him and kind of saw a little bit of this last year, where he's missing throws. I know their running game's not the best. I know there's kind of those excuses. I mean, you got a stud and Nico Collins. I mean, you should just be feeding that ball to that guy constantly. And maybe some of that's from the offensive coordinator. I know I forget the guy's name, to be perfectly honest, but I know they were talking about him 2 years ago for like possibly coaching jobs and things like that. And I think after last season, a lot of that talk really quieted. So he's definitely one on my list. I know they're playing tonight, but Tua would be another one that would come to mind. I just feel like some of it, again, is the coaching and the team and that sort of thing. And Tyreek Hill has gone a little bit off the rails, but obviously still talented. But I just feel like it's just one check down after another with Tua, and just obviously the concussions and those kind of things have kind of played into kind of not like completely going downhill, but he's still very accurate at those things. But I feel like everything's like kind of 1 second, 2 second, kind of thing and get rid of the ball. There's like not much creativity and that sort of thing. So he's another one. And I think so far, obviously you kind of get sick of hearing about it in media and stuff like that. But Caleb Williams is another one that um, I don't want to say he's completely disappointing, but it's like, there's a I was telling someone the other day, it's like, well, there's a first through third quarter Caleb, and there's a second half or fourth quarter Caleb, and it's a totally different dude. First half he's getting the ball to Roma Dunze and DJ Moore, and they're marching down the field. They get a couple touchdowns, and later in the game, as the defenses adjust, he holds onto the ball. He takes sacks. He isn't accurate. I believe he's at 58% or completion percentage, and yeah, I mean, so those are three guys that come to my mind. I'm not for sure who you have in your list.
Yeah, yeah, those guys are definitely guys that I had on my mind. CJ Stroud is the one where I'm kind of like, the Texans are just weird, man, when it comes to roster building, because you trade an offensive lineman where it's like, I don't know, I don't get teams that don't try to do everything they can to protect their young quarterback. But to your point, yeah, the progression isn't just there. Tua, I'm really low on the Dolphins unless they show something tonight. Um, I think McDaniels might not make it through the entire year with a job. My guess is, yeah, a whole new regime comes in. I don't know what Tua's contract's like. I know that they paid him more recently. I don't know if there's any wiggle there with the cap to like cut him or to trade him and make that hit like not terrible. But my guess is that maybe not. He'll probably start the year next year as the starter, but my guess is he loses that job at some point next year, and going into 2027 is not the starter for the Dolphins. Yeah, Caleb's the one where Ben Johnson's offense really relies on ball placement and timing. Caleb just has not. He plays his best ball when he's doing the hero ball, which is also like when he's doing his worst ball too. At the same time, like what he did at USC, and it just hasn't been. He hasn't shown that he can mesh with the Ben Johnson offense. Again, it's only 2 games, but that's what made Jared Goff so great, right? Is Jared Goff could put that ball where it needed to be on time. Yeah, so Caleb, for me, actually, I'm going to throw out JJ McCarthy, and I know that this sucks because he's only had 2 starts in the NFL, but man, he but outside of the fourth quarter, which don't get me wrong, the fourth quarter against the Bears was awesome to watch, but here's a guy now. He didn't look great this past week when he was in, and it's just like now that he's going to be missing more time. That's like development. Those are key reps that he needs. You alluded to it earlier, like maybe the Vikings not looking so great, not bringing back Daniel Jones or Sam Darnold or even Aaron Rodgers, right? That was a talk. Is that Aaron's preferred choice? Whether or not that's true was Minnesota. And now it's kind of like I get wanting to play JJ, but now he's missing even more time. I'm really concerned for his development. I think I had one more guy. Bryce Young. Bryce Young is another one, man. Here's the guy that I feel like we kind of got tricked last year. He's another one that I don't really envision being the full-time starter after this year.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's like you're seeing what you saw at the start and the middle of last year. They kind of ended the year well. You think bringing in Ted McMillan and Xavier Legette looks absolutely horrible. I don't know if you saw the clips on like 7 targets, -2 yards, whatever it was, and Hunter Renfro was pretty much rendering him useless, which probably isn't that impressive. But another guy, I know they're winning, but I think it's in spite of him, is Michael Penix Jr. I've watched those games and I don't see Drake London getting used. I don't see, last game like Darnell Mooney getting used and those types of things. And man, if it wasn't for how dominant and awesome Bijan Robinson is, and also they drafted, I believe, 2 edge rushers early in the draft, and their defense has been super improved. So I feel like the Falcons are absolutely a run dump off team first, and now they were known for one of the worst pass rushing teams in the league. And again, they played the Vikings, so let's probably slow the roll on that a little bit because I believe the Vikings had Darisaw out, they had Ryan Kelly with a concussion, and I think they had another lineman out on top of JJ, like we've talked about, just not processing and Kevin O'Connell just not really trusting him with the offense, and it was kind of a mess. So to get 5 or 6 plus sacks or whatever it was against McCarthy, probably not the most impressive, to be honest, but I still think they've definitely improved on that side of the ball as well.
Yeah, one other guy to get away from the trend of younger players, Geno Smith. This isn't surprising to me. I didn't really think that the Raiders were going to do anything with him. That's a trade that I didn't understand. Um, and I don't understand paying him either. I just don't. I didn't think that he's a guy that really had one great year, another good year, and then last year was just like he's got a league leading 19 interceptions since the start of last year, I believe. So that's one where it's like, and I feel like the Raiders, unfortunately for them, they have enough talent where I mean, they'll still probably pick high, but they might not be in like that top quarterback selection for them. But yeah, Geno Smith has not looked impressive at all to me for throughout the first 2 games of the season, and I don't really expect him to, unfortunately.
Yep, totally agree with that take for sure on Gino. Yeah, I had him kind of on my list too, but it's like when it's fourth down and you scramble out of the pocket and just throw the ball out of bounds, it's kind of a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, like, I hope that they're successful with Pete Carroll there. I feel I don't understand why they bring in Pete Carroll and Geno Smith because it's like Pete's like what 74 now. Like, great coach. Don't get me wrong. Like, really great coach. Are they going to be competitive before he retires again? Like, is he going to be coaching at like 80? Like, I
Yeah.
don't see them being competitive in the next year or so. Like, are they? I get Tom Brady's like the owner and all that stuff, and Tom's the go. I don't want to question Tom too much, but yeah, I don't know about that one. That's an interesting one. Um, but yeah, so obviously we'll stick with the quarterback position before getting into those slow starting rookies. We got some quarterback injuries that are taking shape early in the season. You got Jaden Daniels, who's I believe going to miss this game with a knee injury. If not, it's up in the air if he plays this week. You got Purdy that last I knew might come back this week, but probably won't. You got JJ, who's now he's going to be out for a few weeks. You got Carson Wentz backing up, and then you got the big one, Joe Burrow. He's out for like 3 months. Basically, not going to be playing until December, January, which is just a crusher for Bengals fans to go through here. And I saw a meme that was from the year Jamar Chase got drafted that was still relevant, and it's Joe Burrow with Penei Sewell throwing to like anyone, and it's like he's clean pocket, and then Joe Burrow throwing to Jamar Chase with anyone blocking, and it's just Joe Burrow getting sacked, which has been the case. And I think in real time when we were watching that draft, I think we were both very ecstatic that the Bengals made a very Bengals move and drafted Jamar Chase instead of Penei Sewell. Both will probably end up being Hall of Famers, I would reckon. But man, there's another graphic too where it compared Joe Burrow to Andrew Luck and just the amount of quarterback hits that they've taken, sacks that they've taken, and it's very concerning if you are a Bengals fan and just a fan of football in general because he's one of the best when he is out there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's just another kind of lost year for Joe Burrow and potentially the Bengals. I mean, I would venture to say Burrow is worth 2 to 3 games as a quarterback. I believe Browning went 4-3 last time he played. Certainly capable, but this also isn't the same Bengals team. When he was 4-3, they had a little bit more on their defense. So even with Burrow the first week, it was they tried to play more in the preseason, maybe try to get used to the contact, knock off the rust, those sorts of things, and just with their line and their blocking and that sort of thing, and just he's just taking the hits, and unfortunately for him and the Bengals and Bengals fans, it's just another injury to your franchise quarterback. So um, they may have some success just because of the weapons they have, but again, I think you're going to be on the outskirts of the playoffs, especially, I think that kind of solidifies Pittsburgh being ahead of them in that division. If that was a question, which I think it is a legitimate question, and I think it just puts Baltimore and Pittsburgh at the top of that division, and kind of for teams with the Bengals on their schedule, some of the higher above average teams, they're kind of breathing a sigh of relief with facing Browning instead of Burrow, no doubt.
Yeah, I think the team probably best equipped to handle these injuries, man. It looks to be San Francisco. Mac Jones looked really nice last game. I know that Shanahan was a big fan of his coming out of college. Shanahan originally wanted to draft him when they traded up. They, of course, take Trey Lance. We all know how that ends up. Now he's backing up Brock Purdy. They're the ones where I feel like I know Purdy's set to come back in a couple weeks, like at most. But he's the team where I feel the best about their injury to a quarterback long term. Steve, is there any team that another team that you're concerned about, or you feel okay with having to deal with injuries to the quarterback?
I don't think the other injuries are that big of a deal necessarily. The Jets aren't going to do well this year anyway. Tyrod's a capable backup. Of course, they're better with Fields. I agree with your take on Mac Jones and Purdy. They do benefit from having one of the easiest schedules in the NFL. Case in point, they were able to beat the Saints really only by one score, but Mac Jones acquitted himself very well. It does concern me. I was kind of surprised that he made it through last year fairly unscathed. Jaden Daniels being hurt already.
Mm.
Um, the Commanders played a lot of close games last year, and you got McLaurin coming in slow out of the gate. I know people in fantasy are excited about Bill, but he's still obviously a little bit of an unknown. So, and the Eckler injury could cause some issues, kind of thing. And they're also getting older on the defensive side of the ball. The Commanders have one of the oldest rosters in the league, so having Daniels already hobbled, I think they're playing the Raiders this week. They could probably win without, but that's definitely not a gimme with Mariota. Mariota can run, kind of wildly inaccurate kind of thing. He'll kind of run the system, but they definitely don't want him starting more than a couple games. So the Daniels injury definitely concerns me.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this narrative plays out, because actually one thing I had forgotten about with Jaden Daniels that we obviously haven't really had to talk about because he was really healthy last year is he doesn't have like the biggest frame for a quarterback. He's a tall guy, don't get me wrong, super athletic, super fast, but definitely not like super big, very like long limbered, skinny type of guy. So you do wonder how that's going to hold up, especially like at a place like FedEx Field, where it's like that's not like the greatest field to play at. Yeah, I mean that's all speculation, but yeah, they're a team where it's like I don't see Debo keeping the pace that he's on right now. Like that to me just seems like it's an anomaly, a fast start. Super high on Bill as someone that overdrafted him in fantasy. I am sending my condolences to Austin Eckler. Also really excited for Bill. He also burned me last week. Not his fault though. He was efficient when they used him, and then for some reason they don't use their best running back. I don't know, but yeah, the running back room. I think actually could end up being concerning because honestly, we are really high on a 7th-round rookie, which is a little concerning. I mean, even someone like a Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz is no spring chicken at all either. So they are definitely a team where maybe we were a little bit too high on them because of how successful they were in one-score games last season. I mean, the Giants the Giants are going to be a team that can put up some points. I'm not saying that they're necessarily going to be uberly competitive, but if I think that they can have a few more wins in there with Russ if that defense starts to come together. Dallas is going to put up points. Their defense kind of looks shaky. And then the Eagles are still the Eagles. So yeah, where does Washington sit in the midst of that will be an interesting thing to follow as we continue on this season. But yeah, going into our next segment, got about 4 minutes before Zoom kicks us off. So let's take a break here, and then we'll come back with our last segments. All right, we'll be back. Welcome back from that break. In the midst of that break, we are now debating whether or not we should have put Tua on the resurging list. Dolphins somehow staying in the game with the Bills went into who we picked for that game. At the end of the show, but first let's talk about Steve. Do you want to do wide receivers? Do you want to do the slow starting rookies?
We'll do the wide receivers. That'll be fun. So yeah, I think the year's kind of started, at least statistics wise. There's been a lot of number 2 wide receivers that I feel like have maybe taken a step forward, or at least they've had a good first couple weeks in the season. So just want to get your take as well as mine. As far as do you buy them either being the number 1 or becoming the number 1, potentially in the future? So the first guy I had was actually witnessed him in person this past Sunday. It was Roma Dunze for the Bears. I think coming into the season, DJ Moore would have been your number 1. But what's your take on Roma Dunze? Buy or don't buy?
I buy Roma Dunze. I know you weren't that high on him coming out of college. I think Eli and I were. But yeah, he's got, I believe, 20 targets through the first 2 games. Like that's creeping up into wide receiver 1 territory right there. I know the yardage isn't quite what maybe some of these other guys that we're going to talk about where they're at, but he does have 3 touchdowns also. So he's been a guy that's gotten touchdowns. Yeah, I think he's a guy that's going to be a good weapon for them. He's someone that I'm not surprised that he's ascending in the way that he is. I think that was kind of, I know a lot of fantasy communities were pretty high on him. He's someone that I think is legit.
Yeah, I totally buy for the same reasons, and I think it's been almost immediate this season. So I don't think it's a future. I think it's pretty much a now with him. So completely agree. I agree. I wasn't high on him. Just didn't see him kind of taking off, and but yeah, he's proved me wrong so far. Another guy is for, I know you picked him up. I was a little bit sad about this in our league. It was Troy Franklin. You've got the connection with Oregon. What are your thoughts on Troy Franklin?
That's another guy that I'm gonna buy. I'm not gonna buy as highly as Rome Dunze, but he's someone going back to last year that I was pretty high on, mainly because of the Oregon connection. Him and Bo Nix had a lot of success. He was like a 4th round pick, if I'm not mistaken. Someone that actually kind of fell because of his size. He's like 6'1", 6'2", but he's only like $170 or something like that. So like very skinny guy. But he's like someone that I don't think Sean Payton's just taking offensive weapons just willy-nilly, like trying to appease Bo Nix. I think that there's some legitimacy to that pick. Obviously, there's a connection there. They've played together for many years now. He's someone that I actually thought was going to have a little bit more of an impressive rookie season. So then I cooled on him in the offseason, even though there was that part of me where I'm like, maybe he could be one of those guys that ascends in year 2. But yeah, after seeing I believe it was 6 targets week 1, I was like, okay, here's something that I think is going to be legit. I just wish I had picked him up also in Eli's league, but your league's more important. So I was like, let me be ahead of the curve. I have a roster spot where I can afford to just cut. Actually, funnily enough, Pat Bryant was my guy I cut him for, so another Broncos wide receiver. I figured someone's got to. Sutton to me is like a solid receiver, like a good receiver. Don't get me wrong, but he's not. I don't think he's a true one at this stage in his career. So someone to me, whether it was Marvin Mims, whether it was Troy Franklin, whether it was Pat Bryant, someone was going to emerge and have a legit fantasy. Maybe not wide receiver one, but he is definitely going to be a high level wide receiver two, I think, for them. Which we'll see how the season goes on. But he had like 9 or 10 targets last week too, 8 catches. I think he's just going to be on the up and up.
Yeah, I think they're doing whatever they can to get Franklin the ball. Whether it's short passes, those kind of things. It's just something that is really not in Cortland Sutton's wheelhouse. He's really good in the red zone. He can make some of those, medium route targets, those kind of things. I do feel like Sutton's probably still the go-to if it came down to it. But Franklin, maybe even by mid-season, I guess at the latest next year. I did also pick up Franklin in a dynasty league, basically for nothing after week one, kind of the same thing. So when I saw you snatched him, I was definitely disappointed. But yeah, I think Mims is they want him to be kind of a return guy and kind of maybe part-time on the offense. And Bryant, we don't really know yet. He's a rookie, right? So he's, I think, third round pick out of Illinois. So I think being at Oregon, having that full season under his belt, I think he's definitely taken that, sophomore jump for the Broncos. The next one I have would be for the Commanders, would be Deebo Samuel. What are your thoughts on Deebo Samuel?
Kind of alluded to this in the first half of the show. I don't think that this is gonna stick. I just maybe it does. Debo's just a guy that has dealt with a lot of injuries throughout his career. He's never really been like a true like wide receiver one. He's just kind of a guy that can make some play, is good with the ball in his hands. I think especially once Terry McLaurin really just starts ramping up. Yeah, I don't think Deebo maintains wide receiver one status throughout the rest of this year.
Yeah, I would agree. I think McLaurin, the holdout, things like that. I think it's going to be at least probably 5-6 weeks kind of thing. But I do think they can kind of be a 1A and 1B with that caveat that you pretty much mentioned. He's been a little bit impressive so far, to be honest, Deebo, kind of in the short space. And I think, especially without Eckler, he's going to fill some of those touches and roles. And I think you'll even see some carries out of the backfield with Deebo just to kind of, try to add to that running game kind of thing and help out your boy Bill there. So the next guy on my list, I think this will probably be less controversial, but Davante Adams for the Rams.
Oh, okay. Funnily enough, I thought you would have went Puka there. I didn't know where people had them as Devontae number one, Puka. To me, Puka is the number one there. I think he's earned that title, and just his volume throughout the first couple weeks. I would say Puka is the wide receiver one in LA, not Devontae, but Devontae's still very good.
I would absolutely agree. I think maybe if you're 2-3 years ago, even where Puka's at now versus maybe Devontae back then. But I think it's very clear cut. So I would not buy Devontae. I would not even be a 1B. I think he's a pretty clear cut 2 and a darn good 2 at that. So
it was really weird. I feel like how fantasy circles were approaching that in this draft, like almost like who do you pick between Devontae and Puka? And for me, it's like I thought Puka's been in the offense more. He's younger. It just felt like I feel like he had even surpassed. I mean, obviously, I don't think this is that controversial, but he had definitely surpassed Cooper Kupp last year, and arguably even his rookie year as just kind of the go-to targets. But yeah, no, that was a good one.
Yeah, absolutely. This next one's kind of a 2 versus 1. We mentioned it earlier, so I have Keenan Allen Sweat / Quentin Johnston versus Ladd McConkey.
Ooh, oh, that's good. I'm going to be a little controversial here. I'm going to say Keenan Allen is the wide receiver one in that offense, at least through 2 weeks. That is what it's looked like. How do I buy it long term though? I guess that's kind of the segment. I'm gonna say Ladd. I'm gonna stick with Ladd. I have confidence in how Ladd finished the year. I think Ladd ultimately proves to be the wide receiver one in this offense, not Keenan Allen and Quentin Johnson.
Yeah, I think that one's really close. Yeah, I would say Lad as well, but yeah, again, when you get down to the red zone when you really need to make a play or make a play downfield. The games I have watched, he has missed Lad on some plays down the field though. So there's some things they can clean up that they can unlock, and Lad can have some really huge games. I mean, he's had 5, 6, 7 catches both games, so it's not like I mean, but so is Quentin, so has Keenan. I mean, it's been really good at distributing the ball to all three guys. The next one I had, consequently, they're playing right now would be Keon Coleman.
Uh, I'm gonna hold on Keon Coleman. I think it's still a little bit too early. He's really not impressive, I thought, his rookie year. But I'm not super surprised to see his ascension. Um, I'm not fully convinced. Maybe by like week 5, week 6, I'll have more of a concrete opinion on that. I'm not convinced that he though is going to be a long-term wide receiver one for the Bills.
Yeah, I would agree. I think at some point, he may be their best now, but I don't think the Bills will ever really their offense doesn't go with a number one receiver. The way Josh runs things, James Cook is totally like off the charts now since that contract. Um, Coleman had big numbers the first week, but that was a 41-40 game. The ball tipped 3 times. He caught the ball in the end zone kind of thing. He doesn't get a lot of separation. I just feel like he's always going to be a solid number 2 for the Bills. He might show as a number 1, but I also don't buy him as a number 1. The next one I have is Cedric Tillman for the Browns.
Um, that's a hard one. No, I think Cedric Tillman, his ceiling is a solid wide receiver too. I don't think he quite has the electricity to be a wide receiver one in this league, but I think he's going to be a really solid 2 for them.
Yeah, I think ultimately, I think Judy's the number 1 there. I don't know that he'll really go past him. But then again, Judy is very up and down as well. So, and then, you are on the Browns. So there is that.
Yeah.
So the next one I had was Emeka Egbuka.
I buy that. I'm gonna buy that. I don't think it's a coincidence that they took him in the first round, man. I don't think that they're gonna spend that much draft capital on a guy that they didn't expect to be much of a contributor this year. I know Godwin started the year injured. I know Mike Evans is that guy, but I think by the end of the year you're gonna see Ibuka as just I think his talent and the development and the ascension versus a guy that they had to kind of force feed to get to 1,000 yards last year. I get that he still did it. I get that he's never not had 1,000 yards, but I do see Ibuka being the wide receiver one by the time the season's over.
Yeah, I totally agree. I would say Evans is still that guy right now. I think they've had some pretty tough corner matchups the first couple weeks with AJ Terrell and Derek Stingley. So I think going forward, Evans will do his thing, but I think Ibuka is ultimately the guy there. God will not help in the slot. Will just open up more things for Ibuka, I think, to really have some big games. And we talked about the Bucks. They're solid. They know how to build their offense. Baker knows how to get it to his guys, and he's going to feed all those guys. And Ibuka will ultimately be kind of the number 1 going forward, if not later this year, definitely by next year. The last guy I honestly don't know a lot about this guy. I haven't seen him a lot. Would be Alec Ayamanor for the
Oh,
Titans.
yeah. I'm gonna buy that. I don't know how productive of a wide receiver one he's going to be this year. But I liked him coming out of college. He's a guy that I liked for the Steelers in round 2 before they traded that pick for DK. Kind of was shocked to see him fall where he did. I believe he was 3rd or 4th round. I just think he's a guy that's uberly talented at wide receiver. Maybe not the most athletic guy, but just someone that knows where to be to catch the ball. I think the target numbers speak for themselves. I believe he's around 15, if not more, targets through the first two games. I know week one was he only had like a couple of yards or something like that. It wasn't that great, but did score a key touchdown last week. I think you're seeing the ascension of him. And honestly, like Calvin Ridley isn't like he's not like a world beater to pass for the wide receiver one. So I wouldn't be surprised if Alec is the number one wide receiver by the time the season's over. I think there's a rookie connection that is brewing there in Nashville.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think the last couple of years, and I think it's already bearing out this year, Calvin Ridley just when you throw targets his way, a lot of them just aren't getting caught. I mean, I think he's around a 50% rate for catch rate. Um, and Imanor already getting a lot of the targets, like you'd mentioned. We saw it in the preseason. There was a little bit of buzz there. I believe he was the one that torched Travis Hunter in college, had a huge game, I believe, 13 plus catches, 250 yards, something like that. So definitely has the pedigree. Like you said, I think he could have been drafted a little bit higher. Once Cam Ward kind of dials in, learns the offense, gets better as the season goes, I think that connection could really be something. Another guy I had my eye on that I really wasn't able to get any shares of because I think others were seeing the same thing.
Yeah, I'm hopeful for him. Obviously, I got him in fantasy this past week. Bid a little bit more than maybe you're comfortable bidding for a mid-round rookie that has only had some production so far. But yeah, I do think that he's got a good ceiling. And in a keeper league like ours, you can always use those guys because you never know what your keepers are going to look like once the season's over.
Yep, that was all I had. I think the next section we were going to jump into was basically some of the rookies that are having slow starts and kind of if we're buying into that or if we think they're going to kind of dig their way out of it. So the first one I had, I think, was probably fantasy top pick out there. First round is Ashton Genty. So just watching the game the other night, a lot of concerning things. I think some of the concerns people had, yes, very electric in the open field, those kind of things, but pass pro, he looked completely clueless. Didn't see some of the rushing lanes, things like that. Some of it's on the Raiders. I do think he'll get better, but I just don't think the ceiling's going to maybe be as high as everybody thought it would be. What are your thoughts on Ashton Genty?
I think he's someone that still could have a really good pro career. I think he was overdrafted in retrospect. Looking at it, I think when we looked at like Bijan and Saquon back in the day, these first round rookies that just come in and immediately contribute to fantasy. From a fantasy sense, I think if you drafted him in the first round, you're not going to get your value back this year. Just because I think a lot of that has to do with also just Geno Smith's regressing. Like he had already regressed from the year before last to last year, and I think you're seeing a regression again. I don't think, in my opinion, the Vegas offensive weapons don't scare me on outside of Brock Bowers. So I think as opposing defenses, you can afford to stack the box a little bit more against Geno and Genty, and that's going to make it a lot harder. I don't know enough about the Raiders to know how good their offensive line is, if it's regarded well. I know that they have some solid pieces on it. I think, you're just going to have to be creative with it's going to be, I believe Chip Kelly is going to have to be creative with getting Genty into open space and just scheming him the ball in open space and getting him those kind of touches. Because I really don't see him being a guy that can go between the guards and go up the middle and get substantial yards like he did in college. Especially not this year. Yeah, I think the lack of threat in the passing game, maybe Bowers and Geno start going strong, and then that opens some things up. But yeah, they're a team where offensively, I think they can scheme him out of the game, and that's if you're someone that drafted him in fantasy, that's concerning.
Yeah, super concerning. I guess Omari and Hampton would be another one that's kind of started a little bit slow. I just think his body size and kind of what he can bring out there. I do think he's going to keep getting better as the season goes on, and it's another one of those where he just needs to get acclimated. He's been a little bit like indecisive with the ball, those kind of things, and um, yeah. So as far as Hampton, I guess the dual threat three down running back, I haven't quite seen that yet. He looks a little bit slow, but I think he's also getting used to the offense and those kind of things. So what are your thoughts on Hampton?
I agree, and I feel a lot more comfortable about Hampton because of the offenses, and I think the Chargers' offense has looked really nice throughout the first 2 weeks. Justin Herbert looks like he could be an MVP candidate this year. We've already talked a lot about Ladd McConkey, Keenan Allen, Quinn Johnston. So I think that's just going to, over the course of the season, open up lanes for him, and he's going to end up going strong. And he doesn't have much competition in for their RB2, like RB2s, Najee Harris. Najee's a solid back. Obviously, as a Pittsburgh fan, very familiar with Najee, but he's not going to be a elite RB1, and I think that opens up the door for Hampton. Yeah, fantasy owners might have to suffer a little bit longer with him, but I think in the long run, he should be a guy that competes for the AFC Rookie of the Year this year, Offensive Rookie of the Year, I think.
Yeah, another one is Travion Henderson. I think there was a lot of excitement. I think he was kind of, as far as fantasy wise, moving up draft boards big time, just preseason, kick return touchdowns, kind of showing that three down skill set, those kind of things. I still think he's showed that, but he's made a lot of mistakes out there. So a guy like Mike Vrabel is not really gonna kind of put up with that. He's gonna stick with Stevenson. Stevenson's got I think he's got a 2 or 3 years more on his contract. I mean, he's I'd say slightly above average running back. I mean, he definitely has that skill set too. I just don't think he's as dynamic as Henderson. So really that split I think could continue for most of this year, to be honest, just because of how valuable Stevenson is and how much he can put up, especially keeping him a little bit fresh. But I do think ultimately Henderson, shows that skill set and he'll step up. And I think he really has almost kind of a bigger ceiling as like a three down running back than maybe even the first two guys we talked about.
Yeah, I would not be surprised if Travion Henderson ends up as the best running back from this class. Again, this is someone where I would not have been mad if Pittsburgh took him in round one. I'm really high on him. Still am. I know that, yeah, he's going to have rookie mistakes, and a coach like Vrabel isn't going to put up with it. But we'd be remiss to not to mention that Stevenson's had a history of fumbling issues and stuff like that. So that's only going to keep him in the high fold for so long if those pop up. I think my biggest concern, at least for this year, is looking back on the Patriots' offenses under Josh McDaniels. And can't really think of a time where they had like a clear-cut RB1, like in the traditional sense. At least not most of those years. They definitely like to mix guys in. You had like I think James White, Stephen Ridley's of the world. So I could see like Travion Henderson kind of filling that role and not being a complete bell cow this year, but hopefully in years to come. I think the talent's just there to eventually surpass Stevenson, especially once the game moves a little bit slower for Travion as the season progresses.
I had two more guys. The next guy I had was RJ Harvey. I know there's a lot of hype on him kind of taking that job. I just don't see it. I feel like he's still a little bit raw, obviously very athletic. But really I think as long as J.K. Dobbins is back there, he showed up for the Chargers as long as he stayed healthy last year. I mean, that guy for the Ravens, for the Chargers, he's shown to have the ability to get 5 yards a carry very consistently. I wouldn't say he's the best as far as a receiver out of the backfield, where I think Harvey and maybe some of the other, I think they've played like Tyler Beatty as far as some of the third downs. So maybe there's some question marks with Harvey on third down and maybe just kind of sprinkling him in. But I don't really see that changing. I think he's just going to be kind of used as a weapon by Sean Payton, kind of like we mentioned with kind of their receiving quartet. They'll mix and match some things there. So those are my thoughts on RJ Harvey.
Yeah, I agree with you. As long as J.K. Dobbins is healthy, I this is one that didn't make sense to me why he was getting drafted so high. I get that there's injury concerns with Dobbins. I honestly can't tell you when the last time he spent a full season healthy was. But he still looks electric when he's out there. There's going to be a rotation of the two. Like they're definitely going to get Harvey mixed in. Um, and Harvey's had some nice carries so far, but yeah, I don't see him being like an RB1 for this team at any point this year, bearing injury to Dobbins.
The last one I had, which to me was a extremely puzzling pick at the time at tight end, was Colston Loveland. I believe he has 2 catches for 12 yards this year. I know you can say he hasn't had any targets, but to me, it was a very puzzling draft pick. But not to say that he still didn't have a first round grade. I just think at pick 10, I just think Tyler Warren was just the obvious choice. Or maybe their offensive line could have been addressed as far as the Bears go, but I digress a little bit. But um, I didn't see Colston Loveland as like a can't miss tight end out of Michigan. I mean their offense was predicated, the running game. Yes, he did do well. He was their top tight end target. But if you watch Michigan this year and their offense, I mean they have that tight end. I believe there was 2 different tight ends that are kind of doing similar things this year with the way they run their offense. They're kind of always open. They do those crosses. They have kind of plays set up for their tight ends, and I think Loveland's talented. I don't see how he was the number 10 pick in the entire NFL draft. Could be proven completely wrong, but yeah, I wasn't on board with that one.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that one. This one, yeah, I think we were all puzzled by this because it's yeah, how do you pass up on Tyler Warren? I think we were all really confused with the tight end pick there, especially going to the Bears where it's like you have Cole Kmet already. Yeah, I think Colson Loveland's just not in the greatest of scenarios for him. Who knows? Maybe this is a red shirt year for him in some sense. Who knows why he's not getting opportunities yet? I mean, but also this is a Ben Johnson offense that featured a rookie Sam Laporta that broke rookie tight end record. So I don't know what to make of that. That's yeah, he's I don't know if a lot of us expected him to do much, but I do know being like a top 10 pick, like I think it is definitely disappointing. One guy I would throw out there though to talk about so far is Matthew Golden. This is one, uh, and yeah, I have him in your league. I drafted him with after reading a bunch of reports because like a lot of people were talking about well Matt LaFleur's never supported wide receiver one. He likes to spread the ball around, but then there was well, no, he did when he had Devontae Adams, and even when he had Corey Davis back in the day in Tennessee. It's like, so I was like, okay, this guy's getting a lot of hype. I'm going to take him, and then he's been used very sparingly. And you would expect that to change with some of the injuries that they've had to the wide receiver core, but that's one that's just confusing to me. Maybe it's just their defense has been so good they haven't had to pass as much. I don't know. That's what do you make of that, Steve?
Yeah, I would agree. They don't seem to like to feature a number one guy. I mean, I think it's kind of Tucker Kraft's really kind of taken the next step at tight end. I believe he is injured this week, but he's looking really good the first 2 weeks. And Josh Jacobs is getting, just wearing down the defense, getting, his 18 to 20 plus carries. And I just think they're just distributing to the other receivers. They're probably simplifying his route tree to start the season. I've seen him down the field quite a bit, kind of using his speed. I think he has that 4.28 speed or something like that, 4.29 speed. So maybe there'll be some progression there, but yeah, kind of along the lines of like Luther Burden, and there might be another receiver that was drafted pretty high. We haven't really seen a whole lot, um, you know, out of obviously Matthew Golden.
Yeah, I think that's the only other one I had on my list to talk about. Is there anyone else that you wanted to mention?
I don't think so. I don't think there's a lot there. There might be some guys we're missing. I don't think. I think Cam Ward. He's kind of in a tough situation, so I wouldn't say anything really kind of positively or negatively about him. I think he's been fine. I think once they surround him with some weapons, I think he'll be fine. I wouldn't say he's had a slow start by any means. So that's a tough team. They're kind of along the lines of Miami is kind of showing better tonight so far, but New Orleans and those teams that aren't looking as good, Carolina to start the season. So Tennessee is probably going to be drafting really high again next year, so they'll be able to kind of build that team a little bit further.
Yeah, I'd kind of throw Caleb Johnson in there for the Steelers. Not as like a Steelers fan, I didn't expect much from him at least to start the year. Paying attention to the Steelers like media and all that kind of stuff, like he was clearly going to start the season RB3. We know that the Steelers are pretty slow to feature rookies actually, but where he was getting drafted in fantasy circles, that he going in like the third, fourth, fifth round of the drafts, I think that's just overkill from a fantasy standpoint. I don't see him being much of a contributor until mid-season at the earliest. But yeah, not as big as the other ones that were first round picks. But yeah, so we got 10 minutes. Let me get my seeing glasses on. We're gonna go through our picks. So yeah, we talked about how there's Bills Dolphins going on right now. Tie game in the third quarter. Steve, you said that you picked the Bills minus 12.5.
Yeah, I really wrestled with that one. I just thought obviously it's not bearing out so far. But obviously there's still a whole second half to go, so things can the Bills can put some points on the board pretty quickly. But I did pick the Bills. It's really hard to cover in 12.5 against a divisional opponent, especially on a short week like this. So I really considered taking Miami, but I did take Buffalo.
So for that reason, I did take Miami on this one. So hopefully that holds for me. Last week, I did take Baltimore, but that's because the Browns were talking a lot of smack leading up to that game. So I felt like you don't want to poke the bear, but then they did.
Plus Baltimore lost the first week too.
Yeah.
So yeah, yep.
So I picked Miami, and then we go to the Sunday games. We got Green Bay at Cleveland, 7.5 spread. I picked the Packers there to cover the spread. How about you?
Yeah, I had the Packers as well. I just don't the way the defense has been for the Packers. I don't see Joe Flacco is obviously not very mobile. Cleveland's still figuring out their team and their running game. They have a lot of new pieces, so I took Packers.
I will say Cleveland's been good at stopping the run, so maybe this is a week to start Packers wide receivers, but who knows? Next up, we got Colts at the Titans, 3.5 spread.
I took the Colts. I really like the way they've been playing. I feel like 3.5 is a pretty small spread for that game. I know it's kind of playing into the divisional matchup kind of thing. But I feel like the Colts can cover that 3.5.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think that they've played a lot better than what the spread's showing here. Next up, this game gets really interesting. Two injured quarterbacks. Cincinnati travels to Minnesota. I picked the Bengals here, just like Jake Browning, better in this scenario than I do Carson Wentz. But it is in Minnesota. Who are you taking on this one, Steve?
Yeah, I'm kind of just basically taking Kevin O'Connell over Zach Taylor. There's really not much more to it than that. I also like the Vikings defense better than the Bengals defense. I do like Browning slightly better than Wentz, but not to, I believe Wentz has shown halfway decent the last couple of times he's played. I think he's been on like 5 teams the last 5 seasons. But did take Minnesota -2.5.
Wentz, the first quarterback in NFL history to start for 6 teams in
Yeah,
the
six.
sixth
There you go.
season.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we got Pittsburgh going to New England. That's a 1.5 spread. I did pick Pittsburgh there. I think that they're going to rebound and they're going to come out with a little bit more fire than they did in their home opener.
Yeah, I actually thought this one was tough as well. I don't like a couple of the injuries on the Steelers' defensive side of the ball with Porter Jr. maybe being out for this game, and then also Highsmith. And I know Harmon's trying to work his way back in the middle of the line, and I think the Steelers will ultimately their defense will get back to what everybody's expected. But saying all that, I think the Steelers were a little unfortunate last week, and I do think they have a lot better roster than the Patriots, and that's going to win out for them. So I took Steelers actually +1.5.
Yeah. Uh, so next up, we got the Rams going to Philadelphia. It's Rams +3.5, Eagles -3.5. I actually like the Rams in this game. They played that postseason game pretty close, and I think that they come back with a little bit more of a vengeance here in this one. I'm picking the Rams at that +3.5.
I think actually the Rams are going to win this by about points. There's been a lot of chatter out there on the tush push and that being gone. I mean, I think they almost kind of exclusively relied on that against the Chiefs, and when Mahomes and the Chiefs start talking, I could see that play even being gone during the season or somehow monitored more. If you watch some of those replays, it's like everybody's like cheating as much as they can as far as moving early, being in the neutral zone. It's just I get having a play where that no one can stop and that sort of all that whole argument, but it's honestly gotten a little bit out of hand. It's almost too much. So I'm going to take the Rams in that game. I digress.
Yeah, I have an issue if they can push their players, but defense can't push their guys. They can't use
Exactly.
leverage. That's a little bit sketch there. Jets traveling to the Bucks. Bucks -6.5. I picked the Bucks here, especially with Justin Fields out. I think that that's a no-brainer.
I got the Bucks too. That's an easy one.
Uh, Raiders at the Commanders. Raiders +2.5. Commanders -2.5. I'm picking the Raiders in this one, actually. Just Commanders expected to be without Jaden Daniels. I think that's a lot closer, and I think they can play. They've played some pretty close games actually up until this point, so I'm going to go Raiders here.
Yeah, Crosby could really wreak some havoc. I still took the Commanders, but that's one that I might kind of pull up my sheet on Sunday and switch over. But as of right now, I've got the Commanders -2.5.
And then we got the Falcons going to Carolina to take on the Panthers. Falcons -5.5. I picked them there. I think that's a no-brainer. I think their defense has looked really good so far this year, and Carolina's offense has not. I think the defense is going to have a field day.
I actually took the Panthers to cover that. Again, being a divisional game, I do feel like the Panthers have gotten a little bit better each week. I know AJ Terrell is out for Atlanta. They have a couple other injuries. So I think the Falcons will win, but it's going to be maybe by a field goal.
Then we got Texans going to Jacksonville. 1.5 plus for Texans, -1.5 for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I'm picking the Jaguars. I think they've looked like the better team so far to start the year. I do think that they win a close one there at home.
I'm going to take Houston in that one to cover. I don't think the Jaguars have been super impressive. They weren't able to pull out that game against the Bengals, despite getting the turnovers and those sorts of things. Trevor Lawrence just doesn't. I know he had the one playoff win, which the Chargers kind of handed to them. They just don't impress me. He just doesn't seem to have the it factor, in my opinion. I do feel like both rosters are talented. I just think the Houston's going to kind of eke this one out. They've had a couple close games to start the year, and they are very talented on both sides of the ball.
Yeah. Then we got Denver going to Los Angeles against the Chargers. Chargers minus 2.5. Broncos plus 2.5. I picked the Chargers there for that one.
Yeah, either my picks are really good or really bad this year. I'm taking Denver in that one. I think I think the Khalil Mack injury. I think Denver's gonna be able to expose some things on the Chargers defense that other people haven't yet. I think the Chargers have played a couple weaker, predictable offenses in the Chiefs and Raiders the first 2 weeks, and I think Denver's going to put some more points up on the board and then also play well in defense.
All right, we got 5 more, less than a minute left, so we'll go rapid fire here. Saints, Seahawks, Seahawks minus 7.5. I'm taking them.
I got Saints to cover that 7.5.
Dallas goes to Chicago. Dallas is plus 1.5. Chicago minus 1.5. I'm picking Dallas in this game.
I've got Dallas as well.
Cardinals go to San Francisco. 1.5 minus for the San Francisco 49ers. I'm picking them.
Yeah, I think that's easy. 49ers.
We're back. Sorry about that. Steve, before we get into the last 2 games, was there anything from the previous games, now that we have some more time, that you wanted to touch on or get to, or just get to the last couple picks?
Was that the 49ers game?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just feel like Arizona's still kind of putting it together, and I think Mac Jones did really good the first week. I just think Shanahan, I think they take that one over Gannon, and the Cardinals spread's only 1.5, so I feel pretty comfortable with the Niners in that one.
Yeah, same. I go with the Niners there. Then we're going to be waiting all day for a Sunday night matchup between the Chiefs going to MetLife Stadium to take on the Giants. Spread is minus 5.5 for the Chiefs, plus 5.5 for the Giants. I like the Chiefs in this one to rebound here.
Yeah, this is another one I might pull up on Sunday morning and change to the Chiefs, but I've got the Giants as of now. The Chiefs don't really like to win by more than 3-4 points quite often. I still feel like with Worthy still trying to get back, I think he's got a torn labrum that he's trying to play through. Rashee Rice still suspended. The offense kind of out of sorts. I believe Patrick Mahomes has a 50. I think I've used this number for a couple other guys, but I believe it's the case. He's in the mid 50s as far as his completion percentage, which is very on Patrick Mahomes. Like, he's still playing very well. Don't get me wrong. They're obviously, but they're still 0-2. So I do think they kind of struggle in this one. The Giants have a tough front seven, and their offense has been very capable with the Neighbors, Scatabo, Wan'Dale Robinson combination. And even if Russ isn't the quarterback non-line this season, I think Jackson Dart's gonna ball out as well. So I like the Giants to cover that game.
Yeah, funnily enough, that I actually might switch to the Giants come Sunday morning for that one, just because I feel like I'm going off reputation here with the Chiefs. I'm like, there's no way. Like, the Chiefs they're 0-2 so far. Like, they're going to come in with like a vengeance. But this very well could be a trap game for them, where I don't think the Giants have looked as bad as people thought that they were going to be. And I don't really think that. I think they're a team that can, like, I don't know if they're going to be a winning record team, but they're going to be like a higher top 10 draft, or a lower top 10 draft pick or whatever, like somewhere around 8, 9, 10. I think then 1, 2, 3. I like their defense. I like their weapons. Whether or not Russ is there for the long haul, or if we see Jackson Dart at some point, it's hard, because, like, what do we do if the Chiefs start 0-3? And I get that to cover the spread, they don't have to lose that game, but just if you want to just pick like who's going to win, yeah. Could we be seeing a reality where the Chiefs are 0-3 to start the year? Possibly. It's crazy, but all dynasties must end, and who knows? Maybe this is just the end of part 1. I mean, Brady had part 2 too, so
yeah, they can reload, right? Yep, yeah, for sure.
And then we got the Big matchup of the week. We got the Lions taking on the Ravens in Baltimore. You got the Lions at +5.5, and you got Baltimore -5.5. I'm actually going to go Baltimore here, even though this is one that I might change throughout the weekend. Just where I sit right now, I know that they had the week 1 loss, but I mean they still put up a ton of points. I think Baltimore here is just gonna do a lot to Detroit. I'm hoping I'm wrong here, and I'm hoping that we see more of week 2 Detroit versus week 1. I'm just still not 100% confident versus Baltimore, and I feel like Baltimore's kind of had their number in the past.
Yeah, I believe I think Lamar's only lost 2 regular season games to NFC opponents, something like that. Um, they're just NFC opponents just aren't used to defending someone like Lamar. He has much more trouble, say, against like a Steelers team or Buffalo or some of those teams that have played him several times and can really set that edge and just not let him make those plays. I do have Detroit as of right now. Something's telling me to switch that to Baltimore, but I just might not be able to do it. So I think I'm ultimately going to stick with Detroit. I do like what I saw out of our offense. I don't really think I think the Lions have actually showed very well in prime time, even on the road. They went undefeated on the road last year. They've had several games, the Kansas City game, even the Houston game with all the interceptions, where they've kind of come out on top. I believe they had a Packers primetime game 2 years ago. They've pretty much showed up for. Actually, they've had 2 primetime games against the Packers and won both. So I think the Lions have really stepped up in those games, and I think they've been prepping for this game really since preseason in my mind. So I do think they're going to put their best foot forward, and I don't really think the home field is really going to come into play. I think across the league it's come into play a little bit less overall. I mean, look at Detroit losing in the playoffs, and there's been some other teams where I think a lot of road teams have won in the first 2 weeks of the NFL as well. So, saying all that, I might be a little homerish, but I'm gonna take the Lions in that one.
Yeah, well, for me, it's a win-win if the Ravens cover the spread and win. I get the pick right, and if Detroit balls out and beats Baltimore, it doesn't hurt me to beat
It's all
Baltimore.
good for a Steeler fan, yeah.
But yeah, so those are our picks for the week, guys. Let us know in the comments who you got, what you're looking forward to from this weekend of football. If there's any college games, I know we got Michigan, Nebraska this weekend. That's going to be a fun one. Dylan Raiola versus Bryce Underwood. That should be a fun game to watch. Let us know in the comments. You got Clayton Kershaw making his last start tomorrow, so the day that this comes out, which will be Friday. That great for baseball. You got big dumper Cal Raleigh hitting some home runs. Yeah, we'll get into some baseball talk as the postseason comes on in the next week or so. But yeah, hopefully next week we can get both Steve and Eli on. We'll see it, but we will be back next week regardless. So thank you guys so much for another episode. Speak now or forever hold your peace.
Peace.